In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 college basketball games happening on January 7th, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 college basketball games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Alabama versus Vanderbilt. Memorial Gym is going to feel like a pressure cooker for this one, with Vanderbilt still perfect at home and Alabama walking in as the so-called underdog that no one really wants to see across from them. You have a home crowd that expects to keep that spotless record, and a visiting team that plays with the kind of pace and freedom that can flip a game faster than you can check the live odds on your phone. Alabama wants chaos in the good way. They push the tempo, fire from deep early in the shot clock, and treat a 10-point deficit like a mild inconvenience rather than a crisis. That is exactly the kind of personality you like when you are catching points on the road, because a couple of quick threes can erase a cushion that looked comfortable just a minute earlier. Vanderbilt is no joke either. Their offense has been humming, piling up points and sitting near the top of the national charts in how often they turn possessions into buckets. So it is not like Alabama is sneaking up on anyone. The twist is that Vanderbilt has been able to control most games on its terms, and now they face a team that is very comfortable playing at top speed for 40 minutes, possession after possession, without really blinking. Alabama comes in with the confidence of recent statement wins, including that big one over Kentucky where they rained threes and reminded everyone how fast a game can snowball when their shooters are feeling it. When a team knows that its spacing, pace, and perimeter shooting travel, that creates a quiet swagger, the kind that does not always show on the scoreboard right away but shows in how they keep firing even if the home team lands the first punch. Injuries and availability always matter, of course, and Alabama still has some bodies missing. Collins Onyejaka is sidelined, Davian Hanna has been in that doubtful wait-and-see bucket, and Aiden Sherrill has been sitting in that frustrating game-time decision zone. But the key perimeter scorers and main rotation pieces who have been carrying the load are expected to be out there unless something changes late. On the Vanderbilt side, they have their own concerns, with Frankie Collins unavailable and important contributors like Duke Miles and Devin McLaughlin listed as likely to go, which keeps their core identity intact but trims some of their margin for error. So you get this fun contrast: a polished and unbeaten home favorite that looks great on paper facing a fast-paced visitor that keeps coming in waves, and in a game where runs will swing the mood in the building every few minutes, taking the points with a team built to erase leads starts to look very appealing. As our first pick for this matchup, the Alabama Crimson Tide to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Oddsmakers are hanging a number in the high 170s, one of those totals that makes casual bettors blink twice and think there is no way they score that much, right? Then you remember who is actually playing. Both Alabama and Vanderbilt sit in that 90-plus points per game neighborhood, living near the top of the national scoring tables, and they do it with styles that are built for back and forth swings rather than long, grinding half-court sets. Alabama plays at a blistering tempo, one of the very fastest in the country, and that means more possessions, more shots, and more chances for the score to climb even if there is a cold stretch here or there. Vanderbilt is not exactly slow either. They push in transition, they move the ball, and they are comfortable in games where the pace never really settles. When both teams are happy to run, you do not get that usual tug of war where one side tries to slow it down and squeeze the life out of the game. You get something that feels more like an offensive track meet, where every miss is just the start of the next opportunity. The shooting profile only adds to the fireworks vibe. Alabama lets it fly from deep, sitting near the top nationally in made threes per game, and they are not shy about taking those shots early in the clock. Vanderbilt brings its own firepower, knocking down a strong percentage from beyond the arc and spreading the floor with multiple guys who can punish any lazy closeout. One or two hot hands on each side, and suddenly the scoreboard starts racing ahead of that already lofty total, and viewers at home start scrambling to check how many points are still needed with 8 minutes left. On defense, neither team really fits the old-school stopper label right now. Vanderbilt has been solid enough but not suffocating, and they have not lived in a schedule full of opponents that attack with the same firepower Alabama brings. Alabama, on the other hand, is willing to trade some defensive comfort for tempo, trusting that if the game turns into a shootout, their pace and volume of threes will tilt things in their favor over time. Put two offenses like this in the same gym, keep most of the main playmakers available, and match them with coaches who are perfectly comfortable letting the pace stay high, and you do not need a spreadsheet to imagine a game where the scoreboard operator gets a real workout. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Iowa State versus Baylor. Iowa State rolls into Waco as the shiny toy on the shelf, undefeated at 14-0, sitting third in the polls, and looking every bit like a machine that chews through whoever is in front of it. They score close to 90 a night, give up barely more than 60, and they do it with that annoying combo every opponent dreads, beautiful spacing on offense and ball-hawking defense that makes you uncomfortable from the opening tip. On the surface, that kind of profile usually screams lay the short road number and move on. But here is where things start to tilt in a different direction. This is not just any gym, it is Foster Pavilion in Waco, a compact, loud building where the rims seem to get a little tighter for visiting shooters and where Baylor has historically made high-ranked teams work for absolutely everything. Baylor is sitting at 10-3, and that record looks a lot less glamorous than Iowa State's perfect mark, but it has teeth. They have already played a schedule that includes a bunch of real opponents, not just by games, and they are pouring in over 90 points per game, which puts them at the very top of the Big 12 scoring table right now. So while one side is getting the unbeaten halo, the other side quietly brings one of the best offenses in the country and a coach who has lived in these high-leverage conference spots for years. From a numbers standpoint, the market is basically saying that on a neutral floor Iowa State would be significantly better, but in Waco the spread shrinks to about 4.5 points. That is a lot of respect for the Cyclones, and honestly, it is deserved. They are sitting near the top of the charts in offensive efficiency, they hit shots efficiently inside and out, they take care of the ball, and defensively they create turnovers at a rate that turns games into track meets tilted in their favor. But that same aggressive style can get a little tricky against a team that has strong ball handlers across the floor and is comfortable playing fast without panicking. That is where Baylor's profile gets really interesting for this spread. They are also sitting in the top cluster nationally in offensive efficiency, and they get there through a mix of spacing, shot making, and a willingness to attack mismatches, instead of just running sets on autopilot. And their guards and wings are good enough off the dribble that Iowa State's pressure can turn into a double-edged sword, either creating live ball turnovers or, just as easily, creating straight-line drives when the press gets split. When you are catching points with a home dog that can actually punish the favorite every time the favorite overextends, that is a very different picture from your typical scrappy underdog hanging on for dear life. We also have to talk about the emotional setup. Iowa State just beat West Virginia comfortably, extending that perfect start and reinforcing the idea that everything they touch is going to turn to gold for a while. Baylor, on the other hand, already has a conference loss and knows that dropping another one at home this early would put them behind the 8 ball in a tight Big 12 race. Situationally, this feels less like a coronation game for the undefeated favorite and more like a statement night for the home team that has heard all week how unbeatable the visitors are. That part is speculative, of course, but you can feel how a locker room feeds on that kind of narrative. Health and depth matter too. Iowa State comes in effectively clean on the official injury report for this matchup, aside from long-term issues like Mason Williams, who had hip surgery and is expected to miss the season, while Eric Mulder and Xavier Mitchell have been listed as probable, which implies they are available unless something changes at the last minute. Baylor is thinner, with Michael Paris and Jocelyn Bodo both ruled out for the year and J.J. White sidelined indefinitely with a foot issue, but that has already been baked into their rotation for weeks now, and they have still managed that 10-3 record and elite offensive production with the group that is actually playing. So you are not trying to guess whether some surprise scratch will suddenly change their identity. This is the version of Baylor we have been watching. When you zoom out, the undefeated juggernaut versus slightly flawed home underdog dynamic sets up a classic decision point for bettors. Most casual money tends to lean toward the clean record, the ranking next to the name, and the highlight clips of blowouts. But if you strip away the shine and just ask who has the tools to keep this close for 40 minutes in their own gym, with an offense that can answer every punch and a crowd that turns every Iowa State turnover into a gut punch, the picture is a lot less one-sided. All of that leans toward the home team hanging inside the number and very much alive to steal it outright, and that leaning is, again, a prediction, not a guarantee. As our first pick for this matchup, the Baylor Bears to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. You have Iowa State sitting near 90 points per game, Baylor over 90 as well, and both of them living in that zone where one good shooting night can turn a tight game into a scoreboard bonfire. Stylistically, this does not feel like a grind. Iowa State's numbers tell you they are efficient, not reckless. Their offensive efficiency is elite, their effective field goal percentage is over 60, and they are hitting threes at a rate that has them near the top of the country. They are not just sprinting and chucking, they are working for clean looks and then knocking them down. So when they get into a rhythm, you can blink and they have put up a 20-4 run almost by accident. Baylor, meanwhile, plays like a team that enjoys creating chaos on purpose. They are comfortable pushing the tempo, they space the floor, they get to the line, and they are perfectly happy turning games into who can get to 80 first. Except in their case, the answer is usually Baylor with about 3 minutes to spare. Their shot profile encourages threes and attacks to the rim, which are exactly the possessions that stack points quickly when whistles start blowing and shooters see a couple go in early. Here is the thing that makes the total fascinating. On one hand, Iowa State's defense is legitimately nasty. They limit opponents to the low 60s on average, they squeeze the life out of half-court possessions, and they turn live ball turnovers into instant offense at the other end. A defense that good can absolutely drag a game under if the opponent is careless, or if the refs swallow the whistle and let both teams bump cutters all night. That is the argument you hear from people staring at the under, and it is not crazy. On the other hand, look at who they are facing. Baylor is not some fragile offense that needs the game to be pretty. They have already hung 100+ multiple times, they have scored in the 90s more often than not, and when their shooters get rolling, they force the opponent to speed up just to keep contact. And Iowa State, for all its defensive chops, has already shown that when they are pushed by high-level teams, they are more than happy to join the track meet instead of trying to win something like 68-64. There is also a little psychological piece here, and this is speculative but very human. You have a marquee Big 12 matchup, national attention, a hyped undefeated team, and a home crowd that wants something to cheer about every 20 seconds. Players in that setting tend to let it fly a bit more. Coaches will still yell about shot selection, sure, but they are also realistic enough to know that their best chance may come from leaning into the talent and trusting their guys to make plays instead of strangling the game with slow pace. Add in the foul and free throw factor, and you start to see why such a high total actually makes sense. Iowa State's attacking style and Baylor's willingness to drive into contact are basically invitations for whistles, and free throws are quiet points that often get forgotten when people think about betting a total. In a tight, emotional conference game like this, it would not be surprising to see both teams in the bonus early in each half, which turns every hand check into 2 more chances at the line. That is not guaranteed, of course, but it is a very real part of how these types of games often flow. So while there is always the risk that Iowa State's defense puts Baylor in a box and both sides grind through a cold shooting night, the way these two offenses are built, the way they are scoring coming into this one, and the environment they are playing in all lean toward a game that wants to breathe, run, and live in that high-scoring pocket the odds makers are daring you to touch. That lean is predictive, not factual yet, but it fits the profiles we have right now. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Kansas State versus Arizona. Wildcats versus Wildcats in Tucson is such a fun phrase, but it is also a reminder that this is a pretty wild spot on the board, with one team carrying all the hype and the other carrying all the baggage. Arizona comes in perfect at 14-0-0, sitting at number 1 in the latest AP poll, throwing up about 90.8 points per night and strangling teams down around 67 on the other end, which is exactly how you end up with nearly a 20-point spread hanging out there and a total floating in the low 170s at most books as of January 7th. Kansas State is the one walking into the noise at 9-5-0 overall and 0-1-0 in Big 12 play, but they are not some slow, grindy underdog hoping to win a rock fight. They are scoring 87.4 a game, shooting close to 49% from the field and about 38.5% from 3, and that style matters a lot when you are catching this kind of number against a favorite that already has pressure stacked on its shoulders. Here is the thing, a lot of people see that perfect record and the desert crowd and they mentally file Kansas State under thanks for coming, enjoy the check. But this group plays with the kind of pace and confidence that can turn a blowout script into a sweat for anyone who laid a huge number. They just came off a stretch where they ripped off 4 straight wins to close non-conference before running into top 10 BYU. And even in that loss, they still forced 19 turnovers, which tells you this team does not just stand around and hope the other side misses. They poke at you, swarm passing lanes, and try to turn mistakes into points. That is the kind of attitude you want from a big underdog in a hostile gym. Not timid, not trying to keep it close, but throwing punches and living with the result. Offensively, Kansas State has that classic one-star, many sparks feel, with P.J. Haggerty running the show as a junior guard who is averaging about 23 points, a little over 5 rebounds, and almost 4.5 assists per game, leading the team in all 3 categories. When your lead guard both controls the tempo and finishes possessions, especially in a spread-heavy system that loves to shoot threes, you get a team that can erase 10 points in a hurry, and that is exactly what scares anyone holding a big favorite ticket. On top of that, they are knocking down just over 10 triples per game, so even if things go sideways early, the back door is always cracked open when a team shoots that well from deep and refuses to slow down. Arizona, of course, is a monster on paper, which is why this line is sky high. They are number 1 in the country, 14-0-0, top tier in adjusted offensive efficiency and top tier in adjusted defensive efficiency, and they rebound like a team that values every missed shot as a chance to run the floor again. They average that 90.8 points on over 52% shooting, barely crack double digits in turnovers, and they do it with depth, with 6 players in double figures and another hovering right under that mark, which means the drop-off when they rotate is tiny and the pressure just keeps coming in waves. Honestly, that is what makes this handicap so fun. You are not arguing that Arizona suddenly forgot how to play. You are asking how much is too much when you give a fast, fearless underdog this many points in a gym where the scoreboard loves to light up. From a matchup standpoint, it is a clash of strengths that actually helps the underdog stay within shouting distance. Arizona wants to live at the rim and punish you with size, pounding the glass and getting layups, while Kansas State is much more comfortable living beyond the arc and using their tempo to pull bigs away from the basket. That contrast creates swings, and swings are the enemy of huge spreads because wild swings mean you can be down 20 and suddenly be flirting with single digits after a quick run. And because Kansas State's only notable injury concern, forward Elias Rapieka, is listed on reports as dealing with an undisclosed issue but likely available, while Arizona shows no reported injuries at all. Both teams should have the personnel they expect, which is important when you are banking on Kansas State's depth and effort minutes to matter late. So while the public crowd sees number 1 team, undefeated, at home, just lay it. This looks more like one of those early conference spots where the underdog's pace, perimeter shooting, and nothing to lose attitude combine with the simple math of a huge spread to keep things tighter on the betting sheet than on the actual scoreboard. As our first pick for this matchup, the Kansas State Wildcats to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. You have one team scoring 90.8 a game and another dropping 87.4, which already pushes the combined average into the high 100s and 70s before you even talk pace, and both of these groups are perfectly content to play fast, with Arizona around the mid-70s in possessions and Kansas State even quicker, living in that mid to upper 70s range. That is not a sleepy, walk it up, grind the shot clock game. That is closer to watching pickup at a really good summer tournament, where missed shots are just excuses to sprint and fire again. Let me explain why that matters for a total this high. The odds makers have already pushed this number deep into territory where casual bettors start to get nervous because anything near 170 feels outrageous at first glance, but the style of play and the efficiency both teams bring make that kind of total feel a lot more realistic than it does on paper. Arizona shoots over 52% from the field, over 37% from 3, and gets to the line enough that they are tacking on nearly 20 made free throws per game. Kansas State, meanwhile, is at that 48.8% overall, 38.5% beyond the arc, and is making just over 10 threes per night, so their possessions are worth quite a bit when they actually get a clean look. When you put two efficient, fast teams together, you do not just add their averages, you also create the conditions for extra possessions. Long rebounds from missed threes turn into runouts, live ball turnovers become instant layups, and both coaches know that playing to their strengths means embracing tempo rather than hiding from it. Arizona is comfortable running because their depth lets them keep fresh legs out there, and Kansas State pretty much has to run because their best path to hanging around is to let Haggerty and the shooters turn this into a track meet instead of a wrestling match in the paint. There is also the quiet influence of the scoreboard itself. In a game with a huge spread and a high total, coaches are less likely to slam on the brakes late, especially if the margin never quite feels safe. So you get extended minutes where the favorite still runs its stuff and the trailing side keeps hunting threes instead of dribbling the air out of the ball. Even if the game gets a little lopsided in the second half, that can actually help a high total because benches come in, defense slips a bit, and you get those everybody gets a bucket stretches that send a total flying. On the other hand, if Kansas State keeps things competitive for most of the night, you can get the foul game in the final minute, and nothing pours gasoline on an over quite like a parade to the free throw line with both teams still trying to squeeze every possession. Honestly, the only real argument against a high-scoring script here is the idea that nerves or early bricklaying might drag the pace into an awkward place, but both teams already showed across 15 and 14 games that scoring is not an accident, it is their identity. This is Arizona's Big 12 home opener. The building will be loud, Kansas State will be amped up after the BYU loss, and nerves in this kind of game usually show up as rushed shots and quick decisions, which are bad for coaches but great for people holding tickets on high totals. So if you strip away the noise and just look at the style, the pace, the efficiency, and the game script possibilities, you are looking at a matchup where both teams are naturally pulled toward a first to 90 wins kind of night rather than a 65 to 60 grinder. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. UConn versus Providence. UConn rolling into Providence on a cold January night feels a bit like a heavyweight walking into a very loud, very tiny boxing gym. The Amica Mutual Pavilion crowd is going to be frothing, students packed up tight behind the basket, and you can almost hear the booze warming up already. But strip away the noise and look at what each side has shown so far, and one team is coming in with a lot more ways to control how this game is played. UConn sits at 14-1 on the season and 4-0 in Big East play, and it is not smoke and mirrors. They have stacked 10 straight wins, most of them by comfortable margins, and the last week alone tells you plenty. A 90-67 beatdown at Xavier, then a 73-57 handling of Marquette where they were never really under threat, even while missing some shots they usually make. This is a group that travels, too, already winning true road games, and they have very recent muscle memory of this building after last season's double-digit win at Providence that started as a tight one and turned into a "we're better than you" statement in the second half. What really makes them scary in this spot is the combination of structure and size. They are defending at a national title level, living near the top of the efficiency charts, and their starting group plus the bench pieces let them switch, wall off the lane, and still stay home on shooters in a way that most college teams just cannot keep up with over 40 minutes. Terrace Reed Jr. has grown into the classic problem you cannot solve with one body, anchoring the middle, while wings and guards close space fast enough that even decent looks feel rushed. UConn is not trying to play playground hero ball here. They move the ball, hunt matchups, and they are comfortable winning games by slowly squeezing the life out of you, possession by possession. Providence on the other side is living a much wilder life. The record sits at 8-6, 1-2 in league play, and the story reads like this. The Friars can absolutely score, sometimes at a rate that looks like a video game, but they leak points at almost the same speed. The numbers back that up. They are putting up around 88.9 points per game, which is elite, and giving up about 82.8, which is the sort of figure that gets coaches pacing holes in the sideline. A season opener where they dropped 89 on Holy Cross, a 98-66 win over New Hampshire, a 113-110 double overtime shootout loss at Butler, then the 77-71 comeback win at St. John's. It all paints the same picture. Fun for neutrals, terrifying for anyone holding a ticket that needs them to get stops. They rely heavily on tough shot making and constant pressure. Jason Edwards and Jalen Sellers are comfortable firing from deep and attacking off the dribble. Freshmen like Jameer Jones and Stephon Bax bring juice and confidence, and they love to push pace out of makes and misses just to force you into decisions before you are fully set. The trade-off is that the defense often looks like it is holding on by its fingertips. Opponents hit a healthy percentage from the field and from three, and the Friars have had a bad habit of getting beaten on the glass, especially in the games that matter most. And that is where this matchup tilts. Providence's best hope is usually that you blink first in a shootout, but UConn is not really built to blink right now. The Huskies have multiple creators in the backcourt, strong shooting threats on the wing, and a front line that can punish you on second chances. Reed against Oswin Hunwants is going to be a great battle at the rim, but UConn can keep rolling big bodies at him and still stay strong on the perimeter. On top of that, Providence is a bit thin in spots. Daquan Davis knee trouble taking him out of the mix, Rich Barron still sidelined, and Jalen Harrell dealing with his own issue means the Friars are leaning harder on a very tight core. Against an opponent that keeps coming in waves, that matters late. Then add the whistle. Both of these teams foul a lot, and the officials in this league are not shy. If this turns into a game where Providence's key guards are picking up early fouls, while Reed and the UConn wings keep living at the line, that tilt gets sharper as we move through the second half. The Huskies are simply more equipped to absorb that chaos. Everything we have actually seen this season, from the underlying performance numbers to the specific way these two styles collide, points to one side having the cleaner, more repeatable path to stretching this margin once the first punch of emotion wears off. As our first pick for this matchup, the UConn Huskies to cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. You see a total sitting in the low 150s, around 150.5, and the first instinct is often to say, that seems high against a defense as good as UConn's. On paper, a team that guards at a top-tier level facing a loud road environment sometimes screams grind fest. But the books are not guessing here. They are responding to what Providence actually is so far, which is one of the highest scoring outfits in the country paired with a defense that has yet to prove it can consistently slow anyone down. Start with the Friars side of the scoring ledger. 88.9 points per game across their first chunk of the season is not just a hot week, it is a real identity. They play fast, they shoot a lot of threes, and they are perfectly happy with a game script where both teams end up in the 80s, even if it means they lose a couple of close ones along the way. That Holy Cross opener, the New Hampshire run, the double overtime thriller at Butler, the comeback at Madison Square Garden against St. John's, they all share the same basic DNA. Providence stretches the floor, lets its main scorers cook, and keeps putting pressure on you to match them. They do not need pristine half-court sets to get into the 80s. They just need enough empty space and enough possessions. Now put that into this matchup and ask a simple question. Does UConn have a reason to try to walk this one into the mud for 40 minutes, or are there incentives for them to run with a bit more freedom than usual? On one hand, the Huskies are comfortable playing a more controlled tempo most nights. On the other hand, they know that Providence's defense is giving up around 82.8 points per game, with opponents shooting a good clip from the field and from deep, and they have the personnel to exploit that. Reed on the inside, plus wings like Alex Caravan and guards like Solo Ball and Silas DeMary Jr. give them inside-out balance that can blow past the Friars' contest level if the ball moves quickly. It is easy to imagine possessions where Providence's first shot does not fall, UConn cleans the glass, and suddenly the Huskies are in semi-transition against a scrambling defense, generating good looks early in the clock. Even if UConn's own average scoring number is a bit lower than Providence's season output, the matchup suggests they can live comfortably in the low 80s if they are not ice cold. A few extra threes falling from Braylon Mullins or Caravan, plus second-chance putbacks from the bigs, and suddenly the favorite is pacing well above its usual nightly total. Providence, for its part, probably does not change who it is just because UConn is on the front of the jersey. They just came off a game where they stormed past St. John's late by playing fast, taking threes, and trusting guys like Vax and Jones to make plays in space. There is no world where they say, you know what, let us take the air out of the ball and try to win 48-46. If they are going to pull this off, or at least keep it interesting, it probably involves pushing tempo, hunting early offense, and testing UConn's transition defense over and over, even if it means living with some misses. That is where foul trouble and free throws sneak into the picture again. Both teams commit a lot of personal fouls, and when that meets a high-energy home crowd and a game that could feature a lot of drives and post touches, you get stoppages, free points, and a clock that keeps pausing while the scoreboard ticks. Even if UConn's half-court defense forces Providence into tougher jumpers, whistle-heavy stretches can keep the Friars scoring without needing to crack the Huskies schematically. And if we end up with the classic favorite up decent late, underdog extending the game with fouls and quick threes, final 2 minutes, that final push can easily flip a mid-140s pace into a number that lands above what was posted. Put all of that together, one of the highest scoring teams in the country, a defense that bleeds points, a favorite that has the weapons to take advantage, and game scripts that naturally skew toward more possessions and more free throws, and this total starts to look a lot more reasonable. It is absolutely not guaranteed, nothing here ever is, but the ingredients on both sides lean toward a game where the shot clock is more suggestion than rule for long stretches, and the final score looks more like modern Big East basketball than an old-school rock fight. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Washington versus Purdue. This matchup in West Lafayette looks like one of those games where the casual fan glances at the spread, sees a top 5 Purdue team rolling along at 13-1 overall and 3-0 in Big Ten play, and assumes it is blowout city again. But when you slow down for a second and actually walk through how Washington is built, how they compete, and what this number is asking Purdue to do, the picture gets a lot more interesting. Washington comes in at 9-5 overall and 1-2 in league play, and they are a lot more battle-tested than a typical double-digit dog walking into Mackey. They have already flown across time zones, taken a punch in a tough road gym at Indiana, and still found a way to claw back from a 12-point halftime hole to make that a real game late, even in a 90-80 loss. They went right at UCLA in their Big Ten opener too, and even in an 82-80 home loss, you could see the blueprint. They do not go away, and they do not stop attacking. That is exactly the personality you want from a big underdog. The thing that really travels for this Washington team is not pretty half-court execution, it is their work on the glass and their willingness to turn every loose ball into a small street fight. They are sitting top 50 nationally in offensive efficiency and among the very best in Division I at creating second chances on the offensive boards, even with a short-handed front court. You see it in games like the Utah win, where they survived an ugly shooting night simply by pounding the glass, blocking shots, and forcing the Utes to reset possessions over and over. That sort of "we will take the long way around if we have to" style has value when you are catching this many points. The front line is built for that grind. Hannes Steinbeck has already stacked up double-doubles and looks like one of those freshmen who never got the memo that Big Ten play is supposed to be scary. Frank Kepning anchors the rim, swatting everything that comes near him, and when he is not in foul trouble, he tilts the paint battle in a hurry. Behind them, guys like Nikola Japina and Lathan Somerville are not stars, but they are big bodies who hit people and keep possessions alive just enough to matter. It is not glamorous, but covering big numbers rarely is. Now, to be fair, Washington is not close to full strength. They are still without key pieces like Wesley Yates III and Mady Traore, and Jacob Ognjovic's timeline and Lathan Somerville's nagging issues have forced Danny Sprinkle into some creative rotation choices that probably were not in the preseason plan. Yet the Huskies keep finding ways to patch it together, whether that means more on-ball creation from Zoom Diallo and Desmond Claude or simply living with lineups that are heavier on grit than polish. That kind of duct tape and determination roster can be chaotic, but chaos is not always bad when you are sitting on the plus side of a huge spread. On the other side, Purdue is absolutely terrifying on paper, top of the country in adjusted offensive efficiency, scoring over 86 points per night, winning by almost 20 a game, and doing it in a way that feels sustainable. Braden Smith just became the Big Ten's all-time assists leader, the ball snaps around the perimeter, and shooters like Fletcher Lawyer and C.J. Cox punish even half-hearted closeouts. On top of that, Trey Kaufman-Renn is putting up near double-double numbers, Oscar Clough is a force on the glass, and Purdue has been mowing through decent teams by laughing margins, dropping results like 97-79 over Akron, 86-56 over Texas Tech, and 101-60 over Kent State. So why not just lay it and move on? Because covering a number in the mid-teens is a different job than simply winning. When you are favored by that much, you are betting on sustained focus, clean rotations, and bench minutes going your way, not just on the better team winning the game. And if there is a criticism of Purdue in this exact spot, it is that their schedule so far has put them in a lot of hyped, statement-type games, while Washington is walking in hungry, unranked, and with nothing to lose after getting popped at Indiana. Washington's style also pokes right at the few pressure points Purdue does have. The Huskies crash the offensive glass, and while Purdue usually wins the rebounding battle, they do give up some second chances simply because their bigs are so aggressive challenging shots. If Washington is living on the glass, turning one good Purdue defensive stand into a 30-second war with a reset, that chews clock and makes it harder for the favorite to build and hold a huge margin. On top of that, Washington's guards are not shy about driving right into contact, and in a game where Purdue is already expected to score, any extra whistles on their front line are a quiet win for the team catching points. There is also the very simple, very human angle here. Purdue just handled Wisconsin on the road, with Smith breaking a conference record and everyone getting showered with praise. Now they come home for a weekday game against an unranked Washington team that most of the country still thinks of as the football school that used to be in the Pac-12. It is not crazy to think the Boilermakers get the win, look comfortable most of the night, and still leave the back door open for a scrappy Washington group that plays hard for 40 minutes, even if the game state screams garbage time to everyone else. Put all of that together and you have a favorite that is absolutely capable of running anyone out of the gym, but also a hungry, physical underdog that has shown it can hang around, steal extra possessions, and keep pushing even after a bad stretch. That is exactly the recipe you want when you are grabbing a big chunk of points on the road. As our first pick for this matchup, the Washington Huskies to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Books have hung a projected total right around the low 150s, and that tells you a lot about how they expect this game to feel. They are pricing in tempo, efficiency, and a decent amount of shot making from both sides, not just a one-sided Purdue scoring festival. Purdue's part of that equation is pretty straightforward. They are scoring in the mid-80s per game with elite spacing, heavy ball movement, and a point guard who is basically a walking hockey assist generator at this point. They share it, they do not waste many trips, and they have multiple lineup combinations that can all get to 20-plus points in a hurry if a matchup breaks right. They also do not play at a crawl, especially at home, and when they smell a team that does not have much depth, they push the pace just enough to test your legs and your rotations. Washington, on the other hand, is one of those teams where the box score sometimes looks better than the eye test, but that still counts for our purposes. They sit over 82 points per game on the season, and a lot of that comes from exactly the things that make totals tick upward: offensive rebounding, transition chances off blocks, and a willingness to push after misses instead of walking the ball up. Even in that loss at Indiana, they found 80 on the road, and against UCLA they dragged a good defensive team into an 82-80 shootout. Those are not empty numbers. They show that when Washington games get stretched out, they really get stretched out. Here is the thing that keeps pulling this total upward in my mind. Washington's offense is not some beautiful clinic in the half court, but their strengths are exactly the kind of things that add extra points over 40 minutes. Second chance points from the offensive glass, putbacks, tip-ins, those are the kinds of buckets that sneak past whatever your pregame expectation was. Add in their shot blocking and long arms in passing lanes, which can turn into runouts and numbers advantages, and suddenly you have extra possessions that never show up in simple pace metrics. Even if the Huskies brick a few open threes, they tend to find points by sheer stubbornness. Purdue's recent box scores are also quietly screaming you are going to have to sweat this number. In their last handful of games, they have put up scorelines in the 80s and even cracked the century mark against Kent State, and they did it without needing crazy pace, just ruthless efficiency. When you live in that efficiency neighborhood, you do not need a true track meet to get into the 150s. A regular game can suddenly explode because a 2-minute stretch turns into an 8 or 10-point run on one side and a couple of quick answers on the other. Now layer in the whistle. Washington's style naturally invites fouls. They attack the paint, they throw their bigs into traffic, and they have guards who are not afraid to initiate contact. Purdue's size and aggression on both ends means they are going to draw plenty of fouls of their own, especially at home. And if this turns into a game with a steady parade to the line, that is pure oxygen for an over ticket. Free throws with the clock stopped late in halves add points without adding stress to legs, and totals bettors love that. One more subtle point that helps the scoring case. If Washington does their job on the side and actually hangs around, Purdue is not going to downshift and run clock for 20 minutes. They are built to keep running their stuff. And if Purdue does what the market expects and stretches a big lead, you are likely to get the classic no-quit Husky push in the final 8 minutes, pressing, firing quick threes, and turning this into a more open game than it looked like for the first 32. Either script, competitive or semi-blowout, has a path to a very healthy combined score. So you have an elite home offense that rarely wastes a possession, a road team that leans into extra chances through rebounding and aggression, and a total sitting in a range that can be cleared without either side needing a once-in-a-season shooting night. It is not a guarantee, nothing is, but the ingredients here look much more like the kind of game where you are counting buckets, not begging for long, empty stretches. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed. Subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.